What if you met someone so enchanting you couldn't take your eyes off them? They pull you in with their alluring gaze and charm you to the bone. You become obsessed with this person. They possess every fiber of your being. You can't sleep because when you close your eyes, they are all you see. This obsession slowly turns into a roiling hate. And what is that in your hand? And is it sticking out of their chest? Why? Because if you can't have them, no one else can either. This is the curse of TOMIE, a girl who boys and men lust after, and inevitably, eventually, they kill her. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I hope that you are all as excited as I am to talk about one of Junji Ito's most seminal stories, and this is something that has been celebrated for decades. I've known about it for a really long time myself, but for whatever reason, I just never picked it up and started to read it. I did at one point in time start reading it, and I just couldn't really get into it, so I ended up abandoning it, I think like 30 or so pages in. And then I had the idea to do like this massive Junji Ito video where I would go down the line and read all of Ito's works. And as I was doing that, I started reading TOMIE, and as I was reading TOMIE, I just kept writing this insane script. So I want to show it to you. Like, this thing is many pages long. I got a ton of pages of script that I wrote for this video. So I wrote literally like 6 pages of dialogue for this TOMIE video, and I got a lot I want to say about this thing, so I hope that you'll hang out and watch this whole thing. As of the making of this video, I've read like 8 volumes of Ito's works, start to finish, towards this huge Junji Ito video that I want to do. But today, given that, I had so many thoughts and opinions and whatnot about TOMIE, I wanted to share them, and that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be talking about TOMIE, and yeah, if you enjoyed this thing, I would love to know what you think about it. I'll share my own thoughts, as the video progresses. So yeah, let's talk about TOMIE. The TOMIE collection was released in English on November 20th, 2016. To do this collection justice, I have to talk about standout threads from the early stories. I'm going to cover a bit of the original storyline, and then I'll go into some of my favorite standalone arcs. It's difficult to say what this one is about specifically because it takes place over time and doesn't follow one set character like Uzumaki following Kirie Goshima. The story opens with a girl named TOMIE being found dismembered. It's revealed that she had relationships with multiple boys and had even seduced her teacher. One of the boys in class stabs her, and the other boys begin to cut her up as she's still alive. 42 pieces of her are divided between the 42 classmates. This has to be inspired by Dororo. Too big of a coincidence. In that story, for anyone who doesn't know, the main character has all his limbs stolen by 48 demons before birth, and they're later replaced with the body parts of dead children. Brutal. TOMIE as a character is like a mean girl before mean girls were a thing. She's also technically immortal. She's described on the back cover as a Femme Fatale, which I guess does make sense given she seduces men and boys at a glance, and is extremely deadly. In this story, men get super attached to TOMIE, and out of nowhere, they are overcome with a sudden, violent urge to kill her. It happens with almost every man who comes into her life, and still, she doesn't choose the bear. I'd begun to read this collection years ago and never continued it. Lost interest. Even starting it over again, the first part of it is kind of weak, directionless. TOMIE essentially uses men and teenage boys to get whatever she wants, and when they can no longer provide it, she moves on. This often ends in them killing her. She's also pretty nasty to other girls. She tells a girl in a hospital bed with a bad kidney to stop seeing her boyfriend, even though the boyfriend is the one going to visit her to keep her company. The girl in the hospital's name is Yukiko. She has a kidney transplant pending, which is done with one of Tomie's kidneys after she is killed yet again by Tadashi, Tomie's boyfriend. He and Yukiko were good friends. Their teacher, Mr. Takagi, who orchestrated the killing and dismemberment, pretends to be Tomie's dad and gives permission for her kidney to be donated to Yukiko. Only the kidney sprouts a head and arms and bursts from Yukiko's abdomen. Soon it revives itself as Tomie. Yukiko is saved by an emergency surgery and soon meets another boy named Sato. They become friends, but Yukiko soon begins to display Tomie-like qualities. She even grows a few inches and goes from being a quiet and reserved girl to somewhat obnoxious and carefree. Tomie's cells become a part of Yukiko from the kidney transplant, changing her appearance and disposition to match that of Tomie's. Meanwhile, in the hospital basement, Tomie has regenerated her entire body from the transplanted kidney. Her first plan of action is to try to kill Yukiko, blaming her for Tadashi attacking and killing Tomie with a box cutter. This story goes from weird to insane at times, and this is one of those times. Tomie's cells can regenerate if divided, and a second Tomie begins to sprout from the divided cells. However, the Tomie who had emerged from the kidney destroys this new halfling by burning it. Then, out of a cabinet, Mr. Takagi, her former teacher, also emerges with his own gas canister and starts to burn the hospital down. Sato, Yukiko's new hospital friend, tries to save her, but by the time he gets to her, she's already fully transformed into Tomie. The version of her that sprouted from the kidney burns in the fire with the doctor who operated on Yukiko and the hospital's director. From here we go into a story called Photo. I picked this chapter because it begins to show the true face of Tomie, with a character named Yamazaki even commenting on the fact that Tomie has the ability to bewitch people, men specifically, and he mentions he almost fell for it himself, because he did. She can drive people to kill for her. What kicks this whole chapter off is a girl in the photo club named Tsukiko. She secretly takes pictures of the boys certain girls like and sells them to the girls at a hefty price. The pricing depends on how much Tsukiko likes the girls she's selling the photos to. Typically she charges 20,000 yen or $131 USD. What high schooler has that kind of money? Go figure. Tomie catches Tsukiko taking pictures of boys, and since her whole thing is seducing boys and men, she takes exception. She's proving to be super jealous of other women. Tomie gets Tsukiko in trouble for taking pictures and gets her suspended. The girl then takes pictures of Tomie, but they're all warped. It looks like there is a second hidden face that is suddenly visible, and it is definitely extremely creepy. It feels like the story is starting to take shape. Tsukiko likes a boy named Yamazaki and takes pictures of him for her own collection. He asks her for a picture of Tomie, which is what leads her to finding out Tomie's secret, which she then shares with the school by spreading the pictures like wildfire. Daichi and Kimata, Tomie's cronies, set out to find and kill Tsukiko, but Yamazaki beats them to it and tells Tsukiko he will protect her. He tells her about Tomie's bewitching abilities. Then, as soon as they're alone, he also tries to kill Tsukiko. Tsukiko narrowly escapes and makes it home, where soon after Tomie arrives with her cronies in tow, Daichi and Kimata. Tsukiko's mom lets Tomie in before leaving on a week-long trip. After a quick confrontation, Tomie lets her true self begin to show when called. a monster by Tsukiko, Tomie has her tied up and tells her two stooges to remove a second head that is growing out of the back of her head. However, instead of removing the face, they completely remove Tomie's head. The stooges take the head with them and flee. Not long after that, Tomie regrows a new head and gets up and walks out of the room. So as I'd said before, Tomie is a story that I had tried to read a long time ago and couldn't get too into it myself, but it's definitely it definitely has, in my opinion, some of Ito's best artwork, and you can even see the progression of his art, his creativity, and whatnot over the years. As this is something that's been written over a long period of time. I think this is one of his earlier stories. There's stuff that he wrote super duper early on, that made it into magazines and whatnot. But I think this is one of his earlier more officially serialized works, and you can definitely see, the progression of his art in some of the earlier stories in this collection with Tomie, where his art is definitely a lot different than it would end up becoming many years later. You can definitely see more of that 80s sort of Umez kind of art style, and then as this, even in this collection, in the same collection, as it gets going, you start to kind of see a more modernization of his artwork, as even the character of Tomie, I'd say, gets a little bit older, because when we first start the collection, she's a super young girl, and then as the collection goes on, she gets a little bit older and whatnot. And yeah, it's definitely, while this wasn't, for me personally, my favorite Ito collection, it's definitely cool to see, as I'd said, the progression of his art, and even the progression of some of the different characters that are in these different stories. Because Tomie, as a character, in my own opinion and in my experience reading this thing, I don't feel like she grows too much as a character. I feel like she kind of is the same way the whole way through. And I feel like that's kind of a flaw for that character. I feel like she should grow as well, even though she's growing in a negative way. I feel like it would make sense for her to grow as well. But if you disagree with me, please let me know in the comments what you personally think. Tsukiko is still in danger, but after a series of blunders, she escapes with her life yet again. She is attacked in her apartment by Taichi and Kimata, but Tomie is also there and gets cut by the glass of a breaking window. Her blood that was spilled from when she was decapitated makes a new Tomie, which forms in the flooring. Seems wherever her blood is spilled, a new Tomie forms. This new version of her is quickly killed by Yamata, who was also in Tsukiko's apartment. He stabs Tomie in the side with a sharp glass from the broken window. What I liked about this chapter is the ending. Tomie forces Kimata to kill himself for breaking the window and getting glass in her face. So a police investigation is launched into his jumping death and into the blood in Tsukiko's apartment. A carpet soaked in blood is pulled from the apartment. That same carpet later begins to show bulges all over, and of course Yamata sees it because it is somehow conveniently placed outside his hospital room window. He unravels the carpet to find tens of Tomie heads sprouted across it. Little by little, like flowers being watered, they grow and grow until they're human-sized. Tomie is like a fungus that just keeps on spreading. After overtaking Yukiko's body like a virus, Yukiko from the hospital arc, Tomie finds a mansion with a father and daughter living alone. It isn't outright stated, but it becomes clear as the story goes on that Tomie either killed the daughter or overtook her body, because she's since replaced the girl. Tomie bewitched the father like she does all the men she comes across, and now he believes Tomie is his daughter. Tomie refuses to let any woman who crosses her path go. going well out of her way to track down first Yukiko and now Tsukiko, who both just happen to have near exact the same haircut and name. After everything that happened in Tsukiko's apartment, some time has passed, and now Tomiya tracks Tsukiko down, unable to let anything go. She lures her back to the mansion by telling her that Yamazaki is there, only to reveal it is a farce once they've arrived. Tomiya's father, the old man, the owner of the mansion, tells Tsukiko about experiments he's been running to cure Tomiya of the multiplying disease she has. He wants to inject Tsukiko with Tomiya's cells and fluid to run further experiments. Tomiya awakens Knight's armor to chase after Tsukiko and kill her. Some sort of Tomiya multi-headed monster hybrid attacks the Knight, knocks the helmet off, and reveals Daichi. Daichi was hiding as a knight in literal shining armor. Mr. Akagi and Tomiya took over the mansion the night she showed up in the rainstorm. Ever since, he had been pretending to be the old man. Meanwhile, the real mansion owner had been locked in the cage upstairs. The monster hybrid homunculus, composed of the missing daughter and numerous Tomiya clones, goes on a rampage and ultimately helps Tsukiko escape the mansion of horrors. Sometime later, we meet another person entirely as the Tomiya enigma spreads. Painter is about a man named Mr. Mori, who has sold countless art pieces of model Nana Horie. She is essentially his muse until Tomiya comes into his life. Like many of the men before him, she effectively ruins it. Tomiya makes fun of the paintings of Nana Horie, calling her dim-witted. Then one day, while painting Nana for a new series of art pieces, Tomiya breaks into his home. He tries to get Tomiya to leave, but she insults Nana instead, pretending the insults are words Mr. Mori had said. She tells him the reason she came to him is because she wants her beauty immortalized. Mr. Hori tells her to take a picture, but she claims pictures don't do her justice, harkening back to photo where Tsukiko had taken pictures of Tomiya and she shows two faces. While drinking away his sorrows at a bar, a former classmate approaches Mr. Mori and tells him about another former classmate who is now a sculptor named Mr. Iwate. He has a muse as well and is going to debut with a new line of sculptures. The classmate had taken pictures of the girl on the sculptor's arm, and it turns out to be Tomiya. And much like the pictures Tsukiko took of her, she has two faces. Mr. Mori seeks out and kills the sculptor, Mr. Iwata, in a fit of hysterics and jealousy. He then goes into Mr. Iwata's workshop and finds 20 or 30 smashed up sculptures of Tomiya's face and body. Tomiya is also in the shop. She cries, saying her beauty will not be remembered forever. So Mr. Mori paints Tomiya, but what he paints is a monstrosity. He paints the Tomiya that emerges in pictures, the head with two faces. Upon seeing this painting, Tomiya is aghast and begins to mock Mr. Mori. He loses his composure, like all the men before him, and brutally murders her. And like all the times before, her dismembered pieces come back to life, growing new, full-bodied Tomiya clones. So there are some stories in this thing that I think are pretty strong, and some of those are Painter. I think Painter is a pretty good story, but given that this is a story that, has taken place over a long period of time, you have stories like Painter, you have another one called Moromi, which I really liked a lot, which is like this dude who invites his friend over to help him dispose of a body, essentially, and they put Tomiya's pieces or whatever into like this distillery that makes I think Moromi is a part of like making sake or whatever. I think it's a part of the process. I can't remember 100%, but I'll put like right here, whatever, like what moromi is, but I think that's what it is. Like it's like a part of like the distilling process, or it's something, or an ingredient or whatever. And like they start drinking tomie. They start drinking like tomie sake and whatever. So like that story is really wild. And then there's another one too called Littlefinger. And I think Littlefinger is one of my personal favorites from the collection, where this kid, who's like the ugly duckling of this family, and he gets picked on by all his brothers, like saves Tomie, and then kind of like nurses her back to health. And then once she's like fully healthy, she just abandons him, which is like such a core, part of her as a character. And it kind of reminds me of this movie that I saw a long time ago. I can't remember the name of it, but if I can somehow find it, I'll post it somewhere, where like this junkie girl is taken in by this dude who, like saves her life or whatever, and he saves her life, brings her back, kind of like nurses her back to health, and then at one point in time, like she gets a chance to escape this underground bunker, and she leaves him behind, the dude who had like helped her. And it kind of reminded me of that. Like reading Tomie had reminded me of that. Eventually, Tomie comes to reside with a father and his 4 sons. The youngest son, Hiroya, is also the ugliest and gets picked on by the others. One day, the father shows up with a young woman at his side, who he tells the 4 boys will be their new mother. It's implied something starts happening between Tomie and 3 of the 4 brothers. So feeling a deep shame, the father takes his own life. From there, the 3 older brothers argue over who will get to marry Tomie. Meanwhile, the youngest brother, Hiroya, doesn't want to get involved or be near her, which for Tomie is impossible to grasp, because every man wants her. She chases him around, banging on his room door, begging him to fall for her. Then he gets locked in the basement one day and is freed sometime later by his brothers to cart away and dispose of Tomie's lifeless body. They had killed her because she started talking trash to them and putting the 3 older brothers down. Hiroya goes into the mountains to dispose of Tomie's remains when he notices that she's still alive. He crashes the car he was driving and runs off into the mountains, but Tomie takes hold of him, and he cuts 4 of her fingers from one of her hands to escape. He later throws them into a fire. To survive on the mountain, Hiroya steals food from a local town, but one day he gets caught and cuts his leg open on a broken windowsill trying to escape. Back at his hideout, he's bleeding out slowly and then begins to hear voices. Some badly burned figures emerge from a pool in the middle of the cave. The fingers Hiroya had removed to escape had grown into badly charred versions of Tomie. However, little by little they regain their beauty, and as they do, they leave the cave. Only one remains, Pinky, who is still badly charred and has been mocked by the other Tomie clones for being ugly, much in the way that Hiroya had been mocked for being ugly by his brothers. He protects Pinky from the other Tomies, and she asks if he loves her, and he tells her yes, that he does. Soon, Pinky also slowly becomes beautiful and leaves him behind to die from his worsening injuries. The last of my favorite stories from the collection is one called Moromi. This one follows a character named Ishizuka as he is beating meat to a raw pulp. It honestly looks like a death metal album cover. He keeps beating the meat over and over using a pipe. All that remains of what once was a human being is a single hand. He calls someone named Nagaoka, and soon another man appears. He shows Nagaoka several trash cans full of raw meat. They're all filled with bits of Tomie. She keeps regenerating. Every part of her that he cuts or minces up comes back to life. Nagaoka takes Ishizuka to his family's sake distillery and they begin to pour some of the Tomie pulp into different vats. The Tomie pulp mixed into the sake vats makes moromi, a fermented mixture of rice, water, goji, and yeast. From there, it will be made into seishu, better known as sake. These guys drink the sake lovingly, ingesting Tomie. It reminded me of an episode of Futurama where the crew of the Planet Express make a delivery to a slurm factory, which is like that world's Mountain Dew, and discover it is all being produced by a giant slug creature. Hundreds of Tomias erupt from the vats, much like the waterfall chapter. A gigantic Tomie oozing sake emerges from a vat directly behind Ishizuka. And there's another story too that I can't remember the name of, but I'll put it right here. Like I thought I had it in my notes, but it's not in my notes. And there's like this dude whose girlfriend passes away, and Tomie does her damnedest to try to seduce him, but she is unsuccessful in seducing him. But it's a really sad story, you know, because like he gets pulled into this by one of his friends, and he gets taken to this place where there's like a fan club of guys that are obsessed with Tomie, and you know, she tries to get him to become obsessed with her as well, and because like he refuses to become obsessed with her, like she tries to have him killed. And yeah, it's such a wild. The collection overall, you know, is super insane, and that's one of the things that I just love about Ito's work, you know, and it's part of the reason that like overall I gave the collection a 4 out of 5, and that's just because I wasn't a huge fan of Tomie herself as a character. I felt like she was super one note, but I still really liked the other characters involved in it. I think I made that a comment in my review at some point, you know, like what I'd written is that while Tomie herself is like kind of like a one-note character, the other characters that make up the world around her are all entertaining and they're interesting and they have like sad stories and whatnot. And there's like a lot of different stories and a lot of different characters that kind of revolve around Tomie, including one with like a waterfall or whatever, and there's like hundreds of Tomias in this waterfall, and they all come out at the same time, and super wild story. And with that, we will get to the last part of this video where I'll show you some more manga panels, and then I'll give you my final thoughts on the overall collection, and we will close this video out. So I hope that you enjoy the rest of our time together. To close this video out, I wanted to talk about my overall feelings towards this collection. Tomie is like a virus that keeps spreading. It infects the men that come into her life and turns them into raving lunatics. Often they even end up killing her. They chop her up and then those pieces become new versions of her. The original probably long lost to time. Hundreds of versions of her are likely loose in the world as we speak, corrupting young, unsuspecting men, banding them to her ubiquitous will. There are several unrelated stories, from one on a snowy mountain where 2 men turn on each other for Tomie, to one called Water Basin, where there are hundreds of Tomie clones at the bottom of the waterfall, consuming men who die by suicide. A male model cuts her face up as revenge for his face being carved. She is saved by a man grieving the death of his girlfriend to an incurable disease. Like junkies to an illicit drug, they're pulled by the Tomie clones to commit murder or even suicide. Sailors to the songs of sirens. There is a story similar to Uzumaki about a girl who finds a box full of Tomie's hair. The box belonged to the girl's dad. Overall, aside from the first handful of stories, you can read the rest of Tomie in any order you see fit, since there really is no continuity. They're just random stories. I couldn't stand Tomie as a character. She felt shallow. Obviously that is her character, but I also mean that she is shallow in writing. We don't know where she came from or why she's so hell-bent on turning men into brainless sheep that eventually kill her. She's also extremely mean to other women. It could also stand as a commentary on the way society views women as objects of desire. Unfortunately, I've read about and been told about countless occurrences where men beat or assaulted and killed women for ignoring their advances. TOMIE can be seen as a sort of retribution, a woman who cannot be killed no matter what is done to her. She will always come back to haunt those who harm her. However, the being mean to other women thing really ruins the series for me. There isn't even a slightly redeeming quality to TOMIE as a character. The lore is sparse. We know that she doesn't like to have her photo taken because it reveals the hidden side of her. If she is left alive long enough, she will grow old and wither. The men attracted to her, like flies to refuse, will definitely not let her live that long as their obsession turns deadly and they take one of her million lives.